I want to start with a story, or it's kind of it's not a specific story, but it happened many times in my relationship, in my work with my teacher, you know? And so here's the scenario. I would be kind of voicing a complaint to my teacher about how someone that I was relating to was being kind of lame in some way or another. You know, they might have been flaky, or they may have been they may not been that invested in us being together. It might have been they might not have been emotionally available or whatever else. And so I'd be saying, this really sucks because my friend blah, 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 or my girlfriend blah, blah, blah. And he would just he'd listen. Was a great listener. He'd totally listen. And then he'd just get this big smile. He had this kind of big shit-eating grin. And he'd look at me and he'd just smile and say, well, what were you expecting? And it was almost a nice way of saying, well, duh, of course that's what they did. And at the time when he said it, especially at first, because he said this more than once to me, it didn't seem very compassionate. It's just like, really? That's what you're going to say? I've been wronged by these people and you're going to say that? But ultimately it was compassionate because he was trying to help me shift something so I wasn't putting myself in these situations over and over again. And so because it was what I call kind of a karmic pattern, it was like I kept doing it over and over, and he'd just say, well, what were you expecting? And then to make matters worse, he would also give another example, or where he'd say, I don't know if some of you remember, if you've seen any of the Charlie Brown cartoons, like Charlie Brown Christmas or Charlie versus the Red Baron and all that stuff. Well, and there's this one scene that happens in a lot of the Peanuts, they were called Charlie Brown things, where Lucy would be holding the football, and he would go, and right before he was ready to kick the football, she was holding it for him to kick it, she would pull it away, and he would go head over heels, over, and then land, and he'd be just like, good grief or something. I don't know what he would say. And he would do this over and over again. He would never learn, right? And then she would hold the football, and he would say, this time it's going to be different. This time she's going to hold it and she's not going to pull it away. And sure enough, he did it. So he's like, yeah, he'd say, Mike, it's kind of like you're doing the Charlie Brown football thing again, aren't you? So then the question gets to be, why does this happen? Why do we keep going back for the Charlie Brown football? Why do we do things and expect different results? It's a lot of that definition. You've probably heard the definition of insanity. I myself have maybe heard it a few too many times, but maybe you've heard the definition. And it's like doing the same thing and expecting different results or a different outcome. And that was going around for a while. You've probably heard it. So that's kind of the same idea here. So why do we do this? And this was my job as working with my teacher, as being the student. It was my job to inquire about why I did this. So what I came up with and what I've come up with over the years, this is a long time ago. This is 30 years ago or something. And what I've come up with over the years is it almost always involves some form of me or us, if you will, needing someone to be something that they're not. Needing someone to do something that they're not really interested in doing. And it's like, well, so what do I mean being something that they're not? It's almost like it's not in their nature to do the thing that we want them to do. It's not in their nature to think about my feelings. It's not in their nature to consider what I need. It's not in their nature because there was this contract where I'm always the one that thinks about what they need, but they're not the one that thinks about what I need. So I keep doing this thing hoping that they'll one day think about what I'm wanting to do. And so So it's not in their nature. It's not in the contract of the relationship, you could say too. It's not in the agreements we've made about what the relationship is. So, so now when I say it's not in their nature, that doesn't mean that they can't change their nature. I'm in the business of helping people change, but then I would say to that, are they interested in changing, or is it a change that you want them to make? Can you tell? Well, look at them. Don't just listen to their words. They may tell you they're changing, but are they doing what it takes to change? If it's a karmic pattern for you, it's a karmic pattern for them too, and it's going to take some work to change it. For them to show up for you in the way you need them to, or for them to show up for me in the way I need them to, they're going to have to work on that, which means they're going to need to do maybe some counseling or some therapy, some coaching. Maybe they're going to meditate a lot. Maybe they're going to read self-help books or whatever else. But like, are they interested in making the change is the first part, and are they actually taking realistic steps to make the change? Usually the answer is no. I don't think I've ever had someone change at exactly the right moment that I needed them to change, but it could happen. But that's what I mean by it's in their nature. It's not that their nature is fixed, but that's what I mean by that. So then the next level of this is, if the reason that this happens is because I'm needing them to be something that they're not, like then the next why, the next level of why would be, well, why am I needing them to be something that they're not? Okay, and this is where it gets deeper. Okay, and usually it's about an issue that I call necessary loss. And the resolution, you may have heard me say in these videos, I call it accepting necessary loss. So necessary loss is this, okay? It usually gets back to a parent figure, a really important figure in our life at an early age. So usually that's parent or parents. And you can have two different versions from the different parents of necessary loss. But we'll say it's your mother, okay? And so, so it's like my own mother, say it's my own mother. My own mother couldn't love me the way I was when I was a little boy, okay? And so that is a loss. That's pain. That's a painful wound, you could say, because kids are pretty naturally narcissistic. I think there's something wrong with me. My own mother can't love me. I now have a self-worth issue, and so it like, that crosses a wound. And then so if my own mother couldn't love me when I'm 6 years old, that is a loss. That's a wound or a loss. If my own mother can't love me when I'm 8 years old, that is a loss. And same thing at all the different ages. I won't go through them all. So what we tend to do to remedy this is one of those brilliant ideas that doesn't work. What we tend to do is we get a new person that kind of, what I would do in this example is I would get a new, and I did this a time or two in my 20s, I'd get a new person, I'd get a girlfriend that had some of the same qualities that my mom had, okay? And then I would hope that she would change, okay? And I would try to get her to be something that I'd actually even manipulate her to change or ask her to change. And what I was thinking is, if I could get her to change and love me, she was not able to love me at a deep level, and then I could convince her to love me at a deep level, I thought that might kind of help heal the wound that my own mother could love me. Well, even if she was ready to make a change, which usually she was not, but even if she was, it doesn't resolve the issue, because it's great. She changed, so she loves me, but it doesn't undo the wound of my own mother not loving me. The only thing that does undo that wound is going back and feeling it, which is not fun, because it hurts, it's painful, it's very sad that my own mother didn't love me the way I needed her to. and it gets into abandonment issues and betrayal and some of the nitty gritty kind of tough part of therapy. There's been, more than one person that blew out of therapy when it got time to do this type of work. So it is challenging work. But if this resonates with you, I would encourage you to consider it. I'm just kind of laying out where this stuff seems to come from. And but the upside is, the upside is, so you get a therapist or whatever else and spend 6 months and do some healing work around it. The upside is that you lose the need for people to be other than who they are. You get to trust people to be who they are. That's another way we used to talk about this. It's like just the kind of the skill is trust people to be who they are. You get to just, they are that way. A lot of fun, but he's a little flaky. He's a guy that is fun to go to a concert with, but not a guy I'm gonna call when I really need something from. When I need someone reliable, maybe he's not my guy. When I want to go to a concert and have fun, life at the party, he's great for that. But see, I don't need him to be other than who he is. And then it helps us break our karmic patterns, and we're no longer doing the Charlie Brown football thing again. We lose our need to do that, and we stop kind of trouting for or being talked into doing the same pattern over and over. So that is the upside, and so I'll just close by just leaving you with that thing. Is like me going to my teacher and complaining about how someone was being, and then him just looking at me and saying, "Well, Mike, what were you expecting?" So that's the question I would leave you with if you've been doing some of the Charlie Brown football thing. And that's my video for this week. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an awesome week, and that you maybe consider, like what you are expecting when you're wanting people to be something that they're not. I will see you in a week.